Everyone feared the Mafia Boss's name, but nobody expected the quiet Café Girl to become the one person who could change his world. In the heart of Brooklyn, where the streets carried thousands of untold stories, Olivia Bennett opened the doors of a small neighborhood cafe every morning before the city fully awakened. The warm glow from the hanging lights reflected against the wooden tables. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, and for many people, it was just another place to begin their busy day. But for Olivia, it was more than a workplace. It was a place where every person who walked through the door deserved to feel seen. Olivia was a curvy black woman who had spent years learning that people often judged what they noticed first instead of what truly mattered. Some saw her appearance before they saw her dedication. Some underestimated her because she lived a simple life. But Olivia never allowed those opinions to decide her value. She knew kindness was not something to display when people were watching. It was something to practice when nobody expected anything in return. That belief was tested on a quiet Tuesday morning when an elderly woman stepped into the cafe. The woman moved slowly, holding a small purse close to her side while looking over the menu near the counter. Around her, customers continued their conversations, focused on their own schedules. Nobody noticed the uncertainty in her expression. Nobody noticed that she seemed to need a moment of patience. Except Olivia. She walked over with a gentle smile and asked, "Would you like me to help you choose something?" The woman looked surprised. She was used to people rushing past her, not stopping to offer help. Olivia explained the menu, prepared a warm drink, and made sure the woman had a comfortable seat near the window where the morning sunlight touched the table. The woman introduced herself as Eleanor Whitmore. To Olivia, she was simply an older woman who deserved kindness. She did not know Eleanor was the mother of Adrian Whitmore, one of the most influential men in the city. She did not know that Adrian was known as the Mafia Boss, a man whose reputation made people carefully choose their words around him. She did not know that his world was built on power, loyalty, and control. Olivia only knew that someone needed a little compassion. During their conversation, Eleanor noticed something unusual about her. Olivia did not ask personal questions. She did not try to discover who she was. She did not change her behavior after hearing her name. She simply listened. Eleanor had spent years meeting people who treated her differently because of her family name. But this young woman treated her like a person first. Before leaving, Eleanor looked at Olivia and said, "You have no idea how rare that kind of kindness is anymore." Olivia smiled and replied, "I think everyone deserves to feel important." Those simple words stayed with Eleanor long after she walked out of the cafe. Later that day, when Adrian Whitmore heard about the woman who helped his mother without knowing her identity, he expected there to be more to the story. He believed people always had a reason behind their actions. But the report from his trusted team surprised him. She had asked for nothing. She had wanted nothing. She had simply helped. For the first time in years, Adrian became curious about someone who had no interest in his power. And the next morning, 4 of his bodyguards would arrive at Olivia's cafe, searching for the one person who had shown his family something money could never buy. The next morning, Olivia Bennett expected another ordinary day at the cafe. She arrived before sunrise, unlocked the front door, turned on the warm lights, and began preparing for the familiar rhythm of customers walking in for their morning coffee. She had no idea that one simple act of kindness had reached a world far beyond the small neighborhood she knew. To Olivia, Eleanor Whitmore was simply an elderly woman who needed a little patience and care. But to Adrian Whitmore, she was the person who mattered most in his life. Adrian sat inside his private office that morning, looking over the information his team had gathered. The report was short, but every detail caught his attention. A cafe worker had helped his mother without knowing her identity. She had offered a meal, a warm drink, and a conversation without asking questions about the Whitmore family. She had not searched for an opportunity. She had not tried to gain favor. She had simply been kind. Adrian found that difficult to understand. Throughout his life, he had learned to question people's intentions. His position meant that many individuals approached him because of his influence, his connections, or what they believed they could gain. Genuine kindness without expectation was something he rarely encountered. "Find her," Adrian finally said. His 4 trusted bodyguards immediately understood the importance of the request. They had worked beside him for years and knew that Adrian rarely became interested in ordinary situations. But this was different. This was about his mother. They arrived at Olivia's cafe the next morning, creating a moment that changed the entire atmosphere inside. The quiet conversation stopped as four men in professional suits entered the small space. Customers looked toward the door, wondering why people connected to someone as powerful as Adrian Whitmore would be there. Olivia looked up from behind the counter, surprised. She had no idea what was happening. She had spent her life avoiding attention, not receiving it. One of the bodyguards approached respectfully and said, "Miss Bennett, we have been looking for you." Olivia's expression showed concern. Her first thought was not about herself. It was about Eleanor. "Is she all right?" she asked. The question immediately revealed something important. The bodyguards had expected curiosity, excitement, or even nervousness when Olivia learned who they represented. Instead, her only concern was whether the elderly woman she helped was doing well. "Mrs. Whitmore is fine," the bodyguard answered. "She wanted us to thank you." Olivia was confused. She looked around the cafe and quietly said, "I only helped her because she needed help." Those words stayed with the four men. They had met many people who tried to get closer to the Whitmore family, but Olivia was different. She did not seem interested in the family name or the power connected to it. Later that day, Adrian received their update. He expected to hear something complicated. He expected hidden intentions. Instead, he heard the same simple truth. Olivia Bennett had helped his mother because she believed it was the right thing to do. For a man who had spent years surrounded by carefully chosen words and calculated actions, that honesty was unexpected. Adrian looked out at the city from his office window and thought about the woman he had never met. He wondered what kind of person could offer kindness without knowing the reward. And for the first time in a long time, the Mafia Boss felt something he could not easily explain. Curiosity. The next decision he made would bring him face to face with the Café Girl who had treated his mother like a person before knowing her name. Adrian Whitmore had spent years building a world where every person had a reason for approaching him. Some wanted influence, some wanted opportunities, and others wanted the protection that came from being connected to his name. Over time, Adrian learned to separate genuine intentions from carefully planned conversations. It was a skill that helped him survive his position, but it also created a distance between him and everyone around him. That was why Olivia Bennett's actions stayed on his mind. She had done something that almost nobody did anymore. She had helped his mother without knowing who she was. There was no request hidden behind her kindness. There was no attempt to gain attention. There was simply compassion. For someone like Adrian, that was difficult to understand. Later that afternoon, Adrian decided he needed to meet the woman who had made such an impression on Eleanor. He did not arrive with a large group or create a public display. He wanted to see Olivia in the environment where she was most comfortable. When he entered the small cafe, the familiar sounds of conversation and coffee machines surrounded him. It was a world completely different from his own. Olivia looked up from behind the counter and recognized him immediately. She knew the name Adrian Whitmore. Everyone in the city knew it. But instead of becoming nervous or trying to impress him, she simply smiled and asked, "What can I get for you today?" The question surprised him. Most people reacted differently when they realized who he was. They became careful with their words. They changed their attitude. Olivia did not. "A black coffee," Adrian replied. Olivia prepared the drink and placed it in front of him. "That seems fitting," she said. Adrian looked curious. "Why is that?" She smiled. "Because you seem like someone who prefers things simple." For a moment, Adrian did not know how to respond. It was not an insult. It was an observation. A simple comment from someone who was not trying to gain his approval. He sat near the window and watched the cafe continue around him. Olivia greeted every customer with the same patience. She remembered small details. She listened when people spoke. She made everyone feel welcome. Adrian had attended expensive events, private meetings, and elegant gatherings, but he rarely saw people create genuine comfort the way Olivia did in a small cafe. "Why did you help my mother?" Adrian finally asked. Olivia looked surprised by the question. "Because she needed help. You did not know who she was." Olivia nodded. "That should not matter." Adrian became quiet. Those words were simple, but they carried something powerful. In his world, people often decided whether someone was valuable based on their name, position, or connections. Olivia seemed to believe every person deserved respect before any of those things were known. "Most people would have reacted differently if they knew my family," Adrian said. Olivia looked at him calmly. then maybe people should focus less on who someone is connected to and more on who they are. The cafe became quiet for a moment as those words settled between them. Adrian realized Olivia was not trying to change him. She was not giving him advice or telling him how to live. She was simply expressing the way she had always seen the world. Before leaving, Adrian thanked her for helping Eleanor. Olivia smiled and said, "I hope she is doing well. That is all that matters." As Adrian walked outside, he looked back through the cafe window. He saw Olivia returning to her work, completely unaware that a few simple words had challenged the way he viewed people. The woman everyone might have overlooked had shown him something he had forgotten. A person's true value was never determined by their status. It was revealed by the way they treated others when nobody was watching. Adrian Whitmore left Olivia Bennett's cafe that afternoon with a feeling he had not experienced in years. It was not excitement, and it was not admiration in the way people usually admired him. It was something quieter and more unexpected. He felt understood. For most of his life, Adrian had been surrounded by people who saw his position before they saw him. They recognized the name, the influence, and the reputation. Few people ever looked beyond those things. But Olivia had done exactly that without even trying. She had spoken to him like he was simply another person sitting at a cafe table. That small difference stayed with him. In the days that followed, Adrian found himself returning to the cafe more often. At first, even his own team noticed the unusual change. The Mafia Boss, a man known for keeping a carefully organized schedule, was now making time for a place where nothing was expected from him. The cafe had no private rooms, no formal meetings, and no people trying to impress him. It was simply a place where conversations felt honest. Olivia noticed his visits, but never questioned them. She treated him the same way she treated every other customer. She brought his coffee, asked how his day was, and continued taking care of the people around her. That consistency was what interested Adrian the most. He had seen many people act differently, depending on who was standing in front of them. Olivia never changed. One morning, Adrian watched as she helped a customer who was having a difficult day. She listened patiently, offered encouragement, and made the person leave with a small smile. After the customer walked away, Adrian looked thoughtful. "Do you always do that?" he asked. Olivia glanced at him. "Do what?" "Make people feel better." She smiled softly. "I do not think I am doing anything special. Sometimes people just need someone to notice them." Those words reminded Adrian of his mother. Eleanor had spent years surrounded by people who recognized her connection to the Whitmore family, but Olivia had noticed the person underneath that identity. Adrian began to understand why his mother valued her so much. Olivia did not treat kindness as something impressive. She treated it as something normal. Meanwhile, Eleanor watched the changes in her son with quiet happiness. She knew Adrian had always carried responsibility seriously. He protected the people he cared about and worked hard to maintain everything around him. But she also knew he had forgotten how important simple human connections could be. One evening, Eleanor invited Olivia to have dinner with them. Olivia felt uncertain because she knew she was entering a world very different from her own. Adrian's home represented everything she was not familiar with. The elegant rooms, the expensive decorations, and the quiet atmosphere all felt distant from the small cafe where she spent her days. But Eleanor welcomed her warmly. She did not see Olivia as someone who did not belong. She saw someone who brought a quality her family needed. During dinner, Adrian listened more than he spoke. He watched Olivia talk with his mother, and he noticed something important. She was not trying to fit into his world. She was simply being herself. That confidence came from knowing her own worth, not from needing approval. Before Olivia left, Eleanor smiled and said, "Never underestimate the impact of a kind heart." Adrian remembered those words because he was beginning to understand their meaning. The woman who entered his family's life through one small act of compassion was showing him something more valuable than power. She was showing him that respect was not earned by demanding attention. It was earned by the way a person treated others when nobody was watching. After the dinner at Adrian Whitmore's home, something inside him began to shift in a way even he could not ignore. For years, Adrian had believed that strength came from control. He believed a person had to stay careful, distant, and prepared because trust could easily become a weakness. That mindset had helped him build his reputation, but it had also created a world where very few people truly knew him. Olivia Bennett was different because she never tried to break through those walls. She simply treated him with the same honesty and respect she offered everyone else. That was what made her presence so unusual. She did not demand his attention. She did not try to change his life. She simply reminded him that there was more to life than always being guarded. As the weeks passed, Adrian started noticing small things he had ignored before. He began paying attention to the people around him, not just their roles or responsibilities. He listened more carefully during conversations. He showed appreciation more openly. The 4 bodyguards who had worked beside him for years noticed the difference immediately. They had seen Adrian handle pressure, make difficult decisions, and carry the weight of his position. But they had rarely seen him genuinely relaxed. Olivia brought out a side of him that had been hidden for a long time. One afternoon, Adrian visited the cafe during a busy morning. He watched Olivia move between tables, greeting customers and remembering small details about their lives. She knew who preferred a certain drink, who needed a little encouragement, and who simply wanted someone to listen. It was a simple cafe, but Olivia created an atmosphere where people felt valued. "How did you learn to treat people this way?" Adrian asked when things became quieter. Olivia looked at him and smiled. "My grandmother used to tell me that everyone carries something you cannot see. A little patience can mean more than people realize." Adrian thought about those words. He had spent years seeing what people showed on the outside. Olivia reminded him to consider what people carried inside. Later that evening, Eleanor spoke with Adrian privately. She told him that Olivia had changed something important. "She did not come into your life because of your power," Eleanor said. "She came because she saw someone who needed kindness." Adrian looked thoughtful. He knew his mother was right. Olivia had met Eleanor without knowing her family name. She had helped because she believed it was the right thing to do. That simple truth meant more to him than any compliment he had ever received. Meanwhile, Olivia began to understand Adrian in a different way too. At first, she only saw a powerful man surrounded by influence and responsibility. But over time, she noticed the person behind that image. She saw someone who carried expectations every day. Someone who had learned to appear strong because many people depended on him. Their worlds were different, but their struggles were not as different as they first appeared. Both had spent years being judged by what people noticed first. Adrian was judged by his reputation. Olivia was judged by assumptions about her background. Yet both were learning that identity was not defined by what others believed. One evening, Adrian invited Olivia to attend a community event supported by his family. He wanted her to see that his world was not only about power and reputation. As they walked through the event, Olivia noticed something unexpected. People respected Adrian not because of his name alone, but because of the positive changes connected to his actions. She realized there was more to him than the image everyone knew. And Adrian realized something equally important. The woman many people might have overlooked had become the person who helped him see the world differently. She never needed influence to create an impact. Her kindness had already done that. And for Adrian Whitmore, that was the kind of power he had been searching for all along. The community event became another moment that showed Adrian Whitmore how different his life had become since meeting Olivia Bennett. In the past, Adrian would have viewed an event like this as another responsibility, another appearance where people expected him to represent the Whitmore name. He would have focused on schedules, conversations, and making sure everything happened exactly as planned. But this time, he noticed something different. He noticed the people. He noticed the stories behind their faces. He noticed the small moments that made the gathering meaningful. Olivia walked beside him through the event, greeting people naturally and showing the same warmth she had always shown at her cafe. She did not act impressed by the surroundings. She did not try to become someone she was not. She simply brought the same kindness she carried everywhere. Adrian watched carefully because he understood something important. Olivia did not belong in his world because she had changed herself. She belonged because she had never needed to change at all. As they moved through the crowd, Adrian introduced Olivia to several people close to his family. Some were surprised at first. They knew Adrian had become more open recently, but they did not fully understand why. They wondered what made this woman different. Then they saw it for themselves. Olivia remembered names. She listened to stories. She made people feel comfortable without trying to impress them. Slowly, the questions disappeared. That evening, the same people who once wondered why Olivia was there began to understand why Adrian respected her. Later, Adrian and Olivia sat outside away from the noise of the event. The city lights surrounded them, but the conversation was quiet. Adrian looked thoughtful. "Do you ever feel like you do not belong in places like this?" he asked. Olivia considered the question before answering. "Sometimes people make you feel like you need permission to belong. But I think everyone deserves a place where they can be themselves." Adrian looked at her because those words reflected something he had struggled with his entire life. Despite his influence, there were many moments when he felt trapped by expectations. People saw the image he created, but few saw the person underneath. Olivia understood that feeling more than he expected. She had spent years being judged by assumptions about her appearance and her background. She knew what it felt like when people decided who someone was before learning their story. Their experiences were different, but the feeling was familiar. Both had been misunderstood by people who only looked at the surface. Meanwhile, Eleanor continued watching their connection grow. She knew Adrian had changed because Olivia never tried to control him. She never demanded anything. She simply reminded him of values he had forgotten. One evening, Eleanor told Adrian something he carried with him. "The people who truly change us are not always the ones who tell us what to do. Sometimes they are the ones who quietly show us what we could become." Adrian thought about Olivia's journey into his life. She had entered as a stranger who offered his mother a simple kindness. Now she had become someone who helped him understand himself better. The four bodyguards noticed the difference too. They no longer saw Olivia as someone from outside Adrian's world. They saw her as someone who brought balance to it. She had earned their respect without asking for it. As the weeks passed, Adrian realized that power had always been part of his life, but it was never the thing that gave his life meaning. The connections he built, the people he valued, and the kindness he chose to show mattered far more. And the woman who first caught his attention by helping his mother had become the person who reminded him that true strength was not about standing above others. It was about understanding them. Adrian Whitmore had spent years walking into rooms where everyone already knew his name. People noticed his reputation before they noticed his personality. They recognized his influence before they understood his intentions. But on this evening, standing beside Olivia Bennett at a family gathering, Adrian realized something had changed. For the first time, he was not concerned about how others viewed him. He was more interested in making sure Olivia felt comfortable in a world that was unfamiliar to her. The gathering was filled with important guests, elegant decorations, and conversations built around connections and success. It was the kind of environment where people often measured each other by background and status. Olivia noticed the difference immediately, but she did not allow it to make her feel smaller. She greeted people with the same warmth she showed every customer at her cafe. She listened carefully, smiled naturally, and never tried to become someone she was not. Some guests quietly wondered how someone with such a simple background had earned a place beside Adrian Whitmore. They expected confidence to come from wealth or influence. Instead, they saw confidence that came from knowing her own worth. Adrian watched those reactions carefully. He understood that Olivia did not need anyone in the room to approve of her. She already knew who she was. During the evening, one guest asked Olivia how she became connected to the Whitmore family. The question sounded polite, but Adrian noticed the curiosity behind it. Before Olivia could answer, he calmly spoke. "She helped my mother when nobody else stopped to notice." The room became quiet. Everyone knew Eleanor Whitmore was important, but Adrian's words made them understand the reason Olivia was there. It was not because of a connection. It was because of character. Olivia looked at Adrian with surprise because she knew he did not usually speak about personal matters so openly. But he continued. "She did not know my family name. She did not know anything about our world. She simply saw someone who needed kindness." Those words changed the atmosphere. The people around them began looking at Olivia differently. They realized she was not someone who entered their world by seeking attention. She was someone whose actions spoke louder than any introduction could. Later, Olivia stepped outside for a quiet moment. Adrian followed and stood beside her. "I hope you know you do not have to prove yourself to anyone here," he said. Olivia smiled. "I was not trying to prove anything." Adrian nodded because that was exactly what made her different. She had never entered his life wanting recognition. She had never tried to gain influence. She had simply remained true to herself. Meanwhile, the four bodyguards observed the change with quiet respect. They had known Adrian for years, and they had seen how carefully he protected his emotions. But Olivia had created a space where he no longer felt the need to hide behind his reputation. Eleanor watched them from a distance and felt grateful. She knew her son was discovering something that power could never provide. He was discovering peace. As the evening ended, Adrian looked around the room and realized the people who respected him most were not the ones who feared his position. They were the ones who understood his humanity. And Olivia Bennet, the woman many people might have overlooked, had become the person who reminded him that the greatest impact a person can make is not through power, but through the way they make others feel valued. In the weeks after the gathering, Adrian Whitmore began to understand that the biggest changes in his life were not the ones people could see. The city still recognized him as a powerful man. His schedule remained busy, and many people still approached him with careful words because of his position. But inside, something had become different. He no longer viewed every conversation as a negotiation. He no longer measured every person by what they could offer. Olivia Bennet had quietly changed the way he looked at the world. She never gave him a speech about becoming a better person. She never tried to tell him who he should be. Instead, she showed him through her actions that respect was something everyone deserved. Adrian began visiting the cafe more often, not because he needed a place to escape, but because it reminded him of a simpler way of living. The small tables, the sound of coffee being prepared, and the conversations between ordinary people gave him a perspective he had forgotten. One afternoon, he watched Olivia speak with a young employee who had made a mistake. Instead of criticizing her, Olivia patiently explained what went wrong and encouraged her to learn from it. Adrian noticed the employee leave the conversation feeling confident instead of embarrassed. "You always find a way to make people feel better," Adrian said. Olivia looked at him and smiled. People usually know when they have made a mistake. They do not always need someone to remind them. Sometimes they just need someone to believe they can do better. Adrian remembered those words because they applied to more than just a simple mistake. For years, he had believed people were defined by their past decisions and the roles they carried. Olivia reminded him that people could grow when someone believed there was more to them. Meanwhile, Eleanor Whitmore saw the connection between them becoming stronger. She knew Olivia had brought something rare into Adrian's life. Not excitement, not attention, balance. One evening, Eleanor invited Olivia to spend time with the family again. This time, Olivia felt more comfortable. She was no longer the outsider wondering whether she belonged. She understood that she did not need to change herself to fit into Adrian's world. Her kindness, honesty, and confidence were the reasons she was welcomed. The 4 bodyguards who once arrived at the cafe as strangers now treated Olivia with genuine respect. They had witnessed the difference she made in Adrian's life. They saw that the man they protected was becoming more open, more patient, and more connected to the people around him. One night, Adrian and Olivia stood outside looking over the city lights. The streets below were filled with people living thousands of different stories. Adrian quietly said, "I used to think being respected meant being someone people were afraid to challenge." Olivia looked at him and asked, "And what do you think now?" Adrian paused before answering. "I think respect comes from how people remember the way you treated them." Olivia smiled because that was the same belief she had carried all her life. They came from different backgrounds. They had experienced different worlds, but they both understood what it meant to be judged before being known. The difference was that now they had someone who saw beyond the surface. Adrian had spent years building a powerful name, but Olivia showed him something more valuable than reputation. She showed him the importance of being remembered as a person. And as their lives continued to change, one truth became impossible to ignore. The woman who once seemed invisible to the world had become the person who helped one of the most powerful men in the city finally see what truly mattered. Months later, Adrian Whitmore found himself standing in the same small cafe where everything had started. The morning sunlight passed through the windows, touching the wooden tables and creating the same peaceful atmosphere Olivia Bennet had always created for everyone who walked through the door. To anyone else, it looked like an ordinary cafe on an ordinary day. But Adrian knew it represented something much greater. It was the place where he first learned that a person's value was never determined by their name, their position, or the world they came from. It was where he met the woman who reminded him that kindness could reach places power never could. Olivia continued living the same way she always had. She still greeted customers with warmth, still listened to their stories, and still treated every person with the same respect. She had never changed because of Adrian's world. She had never needed to. Her strength came from knowing exactly who she was. Adrian admired that more than anything. Over time, people around him noticed the difference. The man who once seemed distant had become someone who listened more carefully and valued the people around him. His decisions were still thoughtful and serious, but now they were guided by something beyond responsibility. They were guided by understanding. Eleanor Whitmore often smiled when she saw the changes in her son. She knew Adrian had not become a different person because someone forced him to change. He changed because someone reminded him of the person he had always been capable of becoming. One afternoon, Eleanor visited Olivia at the cafe. The two women sat near the window where they had shared their first conversation months earlier. Eleanor looked around the room and smiled. "You know, this place changed my family." Olivia looked surprised. "I only offered a little kindness." Eleanor shook her head gently. "Sometimes a little kindness is exactly what someone needs." Those words stayed with Olivia because she had never believed her actions were extraordinary. She simply believed people deserved care and respect. That belief was the reason Adrian had grown to value her so deeply. Later that evening, Adrian and Olivia walked through the city together. The streets were busy, filled with people heading home, sharing conversations, and creating their own stories. Adrian looked around and realized how much his perspective had changed. For years, he thought legacy came from influence and reputation. Now he understood that the moments people remembered most were often the quiet ones. A kind gesture, a sincere conversation, a moment when someone felt seen. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we never met?" Adrian asked. Olivia smiled. "I think life has a way of bringing people together when they need to learn something from each other." Adrian looked at her and understood exactly what she meant. She had entered his life as someone he never expected to meet. She had not come from his world, but she had shown him something his world could not teach him. As time passed, the story of the cafe girl who helped Eleanor Whitmore became known among those closest to the family. But the most important part of the story was never the connection to a powerful man. It was the simple truth behind it. Olivia helped someone because it was the right thing to do. She did not know who was watching. She did not know what would come from that moment. She only knew someone needed kindness. And that was enough. Adrian once believed power was the strongest thing a person could have. But Olivia showed him that compassion could leave a deeper mark. The world remembered the Mafia Boss for his influence, but those who truly knew him remembered the moment he learned what dignity looked like. Because in the end, the greatest change did not come from gaining more power. It came from understanding the value of every person standing in front of him.